Welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. We ask that you please note that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and does not constitute medical advice. It is essential to consult with a qualified healthcare professional for any medical concerns, diagnosis, or treatment. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, and any actions taken based on the information presented are at your own risk. We are so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and join us for another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast with your hosts, Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis. Let's watch what this evening's Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast, we're talking about something that affects all of us, sleep, or more accurately, the lack of sleep. Host Steve Hodgson, along with our co-host and our very own psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis, will discuss the mental effects, and they will welcome a board-certified neurologist and sleep specialist Dr. Michael Presti to discuss how sleep deprivation is silently damaging not only your mental well-being, but your physical health as well, and what you can do to take control over this and get your life back. You will learn the real consequences of sleep deprivation, how poor sleep affects your heart, brain, and immune system, the link between sleep, anxiety, and depression. Learn about sleep disorders like insomnia and sleep apnea. Did you know that 1 in 3 U.S. adults regularly do not get enough sleep? 35.5% of adults report sleeping less than 7 hours per night. 50 to 70 million Americans suffer from sleep disorders including insomnia, sleep apnea, and narcolepsy. 37% of teens report symptoms consistent with at least mild levels of depression, often linked to poor sleep habits. Chronic insomnia affects 12% of Americans, often associated with depression, anxiety, and type 2 diabetes. Insufficient sleep is linked to increased risks of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and dementia. A CDC study found that both short and long sleep durations are significantly associated with leading chronic diseases. In Honolulu, Hawaii, 42.3% of adults sleep less than 7 hours a night, ranking it among the most sleep-deprived cities. Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander adults have the highest rates of insufficient sleep at 49%. Obstructive sleep apnea affects approximately 25 million U.S. adults. Restless leg syndrome affects 5 to 10% of adults and 2 to 4% of children. Narcolepsy affects about 1 in every 2,000 adults in the U.S. We will explore the science and psychology behind sleep. You will learn how sleep affects your mind, body, and emotions, and what you can do to sleep better, starting tonight. Whether you're struggling to fall asleep, wake up refreshed, or manage stress, this episode is packed with real talk and practical solutions. Here are your hosts, Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis.
Anyway, let's try to say it. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. It's the podcast that puts your mental, emotional, and physical health first. I'm your host, Steve Hodgson, along with my co-host and our knowledgeable, licensed psychotherapist, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Now, Dr. Davis is also coming to us from... I'm hearing myself here, and I'm like, now what's going on? But I was checking YouTube to make sure that I can hear myself. You're coming to us from location today, are you not?
Yeah, I'm in Orlando
okay,
right now.
So he's about an hour and a half away from me, but with the power of magic, and hopefully, all fingers crossed, that his video won't log up on us anymore. We're actually zeroed down really well on what's going on, so we should be able to not have that situation in the future. Now, one thing I'm going to say before we get into the show, the introduction there that played the video talked about Dr. Michael Presti joining us this evening. And about an hour ago, I got a text from Dr. Presti that he got called on a medical emergency. So he's not, unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with. We're dealing with doctors and sometimes with guests, that they're going to be unable to make it at the last second. So I apologize that, that's going on there today. So, but let's delve right into the subject matter. And it affects every single one of us, every single day. And hopefully every single day, which is sleep. Now, sleep's important to us both mentally and physically. And tonight we're going to explore how lack of sleep impacts your body, your mind, how it connects to everything from our heart to our mental health, and most importantly, what we can do about it. Now, let's get right into it. But the only thing I implore each and every one of you is please don't fall asleep during the podcast. Okay, that's the last thing we want. So let's get started with the mental health connection. Now, Dr. Davis, what's the relationship between sleep and mental health conditions like anxiety and depression?
So with anxiety and depression, really what they find is that those are connected to lack of sleep. So if a person isn't getting enough sleep, I always think of it as like um, basically if you think about like your body needs a chance to regenerate. If you don't allow it a chance to do that, it can't operate at its best. So they found definite links between sleep deprivation and anxiety and depression.
So, if someone's having sleep deprivation, does it affect our emotions, um, or anxiety or depression? I mean, what actually is it doing to our mind?
It's not allowing it to get the rest that it needs to operate optimally. So it be kind of like an engine in a car. Think of sleep as gasoline or fuel, and a car can't run without fuel. So that's kind of how it works with sleep.
Yeah, and well, at least it's not as expensive as gasoline, so we're okay as far as that's concerned. Now,
If it is not sleep
yeah,
deprived.
so let's talk about some behavior and emotional patterns um, with people that are sleep deprived, like the clients that come into you. What patterns and stuff do you see?
Definitely irritability. I would say is one of the big ones where when a person isn't getting enough sleep, a lot of times they'll come in and they'll say small things are bothering me. I don't understand why. You know, um, or and obviously diet has a lot to do with that also, caffeine and so forth. Um, Actually, this is non-caffeinated, I believe. My diet milk, but I just remember talking to a friend of mine once, and it was about 8 o'clock at night, and I was sitting there on the phone, and I just said, "Yeah, man, I can't sleep. I'm just having a hard time sleeping." We were talking about that, and he said, "What are you doing right now?" And I said, "Sitting here drinking some coffee." And he said, "Well, no wonder you can't sleep at 8 p.m. when you're drinking coffee." You know,
Well, you see,
so
I try to tell people all the time, caffeine will affect your sleep. I mean, even myself. I mean, most of the days I drink water anyway, or water with Crystal Light in it. So I try to steer away from caffeine in general. But sometimes, like if I go out to a restaurant or something, I'll have like unsweet tea or something. But I know myself, if like after 6 p.m., if I start drinking iced tea, unsweet tea, I'm gonna be up for a while. Okay, there's no question about that. I'm gonna be awake for a while, and your wife will actually let you know if that's caffeinated what you have there.
yes, she will, no hesitation.
Yes, exactly. I can hear that one coming back at us too. So let's talk about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and that's got a CBT1. Okay. How do you use that in your own? Well, first off, what is it, and how do you use it in your practice?
Well, so I have never personally used it. I've used like relaxation techniques and things of that nature to teach clients how to relax, to try and get better sleep. But I know that cognitive, good Lord, I can't even talk. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Let me just say it that way. That's easy. CBT has to do with identifying, basically invasive or unhealthy thoughts, and then once we identify those, we put plans in place on how to either, um, combat those thoughts or do something different. So a lot of, most of the time, substance use treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy because a person has a thought of using, and then we can't fix those thoughts of using, but we can fix the actions taken on based on those thoughts.
So let me ask you, because you just hit a thought in my head here. Um, Obviously, someone who's doing cocaine, and has a drug addiction isn't going to be able to sleep, okay? Or even with heroin and stuff, they need that other thing.
Especially
Yeah,
meth.
right. Yeah, well,
Methane.
yeah. Well, meth is basically cocaine, just like crack was. It just like wired up even that much worse.
Yeah,
But I would imagine the same thing holds true for someone, let's say, with a gambling addiction.
yeah. So a lot of the problem gamblers that I work with, well, I remember one client saying that he felt like he could never sleep, and he kind of said it jokingly, but I mean, truth to it, he said, you know, because Chinese table tennis is on at 3 a.m. And he was like, and that's what I'm betting on that. It's like, so basically, especially with gambling addiction or substance use, I mean, it really, a good friend of mine used to say it's like having a really crappy full-time job that you have to pay to have. You have to pay to maintain this full-time job.
Chinese table tennis. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's what
really bad.
that's what the client would say.
That's a really bad addiction. If you're betting on that,
Yeah,
that I mean, I guess people do and stuff. It just so I never even realized that was
yeah,
televised on TV. So I guess that's one of those cable channels, the sports channels. I guess if you pay for it, you get it.
or maybe he was watching. He might have been watching it on a gambling site
Right.
or
It's yeah.
something like that. He-
But
yeah.
so how if there's somebody that has that anxiety, and I mean, we've talked about. I mean, in the last 9 weeks, we talked about so much stuff. Okay, so if we lose you at all, go back and watch from the beginning forward through. Okay, on our shows because we build each and every week on it. And I also want to say thank you for the over 2,000 subscribers to our channel. I mean, you blew our minds this morning. Okay, when I first saw it, and it was almost like 1,800 this morning. And then all of a sudden, I looked before we were getting ready to go on the air, and it was over 2,000. So thank you, folks. Okay, we really appreciate you being here and stuff. But so someone who's got this kind of anxiety, okay, and my racing thoughts, okay, I'm going to even get away from the drugs. Well, let's walk away from the drugs and the gambling for a minute. Business owners, okay, there's so many business owners like I used to be that you don't shut your brain off at night. Your brain is racing. It's like I'm counting sheep. 1, 2, and 2 o'clock. Yeah, tomorrow I have to actually. That's what's
Yeah.
happening inside of our brains. I know I was there for the longest period of time.
Yeah.
How does someone manage that?
There's a lot of different ways. Some people talk about counting sheep or those sorts of things. One of the most interesting things that I've found as far as sleep goes, and I have to look it up, but there's a military exercise, and they talk about either, from what I recall, it was you're either laying in a velvet hammock or like a rowboat, like so you're laying down, and there's a whole series of things, but they say that method you can be asleep within like 5 to 7 minutes, I think. You know, what I found pretty helpful is a lot of clients get pretty good results with guided
Mm-hmm.
meditation. Because obviously, if shutting my brain off, and I mean, I understand what that's like, trying to shut your brain off at night. Um, but if my brain won't shut off, then a guided meditation, I just focus. If I can just focus on that and do whatever the voice is prompting me to do, a lot of clients have said that really helped. Guided meditation, and especially nowadays, there's tons of free ones on YouTube that you
Meditation.
can get.
We'll end up doing an episode on meditation because that meditation is so important. I know even myself, with one of my friends who actually teaches meditation, actually it said start with the tip of your toes or the top of your head. I don't remember which order it was, and I don't think it really makes a difference. But just feel each one of those and work your way down. Just feel that part of you relaxing, and your chest starting to relax, your arms, your shoulders, your fingers, and relax. And that's really what you're going into a meditation state. And your legs all the way down to your feet. Your toes, and that's going to help you tremendously. To just chill out and fall asleep and not I know myself. I tried to meditate. And you notice the operative word there is I have tried to meditate, folks. I really have. And my wife teaches meditation. I still can't meditate because I still am easily distracted. The dog will bark, or I'll hear a noise outside, and like you heard, even Dave said last week that we're on. Okay, the littlest sounds, and you're watching the door. That's still what goes on inside my brain. So if I hear a noise, I'll come right out of where I'm at. So probably if you can put me in a padded, soundproofed room, I might be able to do that. But even then, I'd be sitting there. I can see myself starting to go. So I wonder how does this soundproofing work that I'm not hearing? That's what my brain will do. I don't think it's
Yeah.
capable to shut it off. But I do think it's really amazing. We'll do even an episode on dreams and stuff, but I actually feel like I travel off to another dimension when I go to sleep at night. Okay, I fall
Yeah.
into that deep of a sleep, and we're going to talk about why very shortly. We fall into that deep portion of sleep, but I actually feel like I'm going into like another body somewhere in my dream and living this dream, and some of it continues from from night to night, where there's still some factors that are the same. It's almost like okay, I popped into that body now, and for the next 8 hours, I'm going to be living in that body, and then when it's time to come back, I astral travel or whatever they say back to my own brain, and it's kind of interesting. Now, because it's saying here that during sleep, both the brain and body undergo a series of restorative processes. Okay, the brain processes information, clears out waste, straightens connections with the neurons, and the body repairs cells. Okay, it restores energy, releases hormones and proteins, and contribute to our overall well-being. So I know that Dr. Presti was going to talk about some of this there, and we probably still will get an interview with him, further down the line. But I want first to talk about what it does to our mind. When we sleep, we have memory consolidation. It allows the brain to consolidate memories, reorganize learned information, and it makes it easier for you to use access to that information later. See, I always look at it like defrag on your computer. Okay,
Yeah. That's what I
yeah,
was just
that's really
thinking of.
what it is.
Or
Yeah,
disk cleanup.
but you're taking your defrag, you're taking your files and putting them back in order. So the next time you go to look for them, you can access them. They come from 1, 2, 3 without that hesitation or the computer looking for it. And to me, that's what memory consolidation is. And for those like my heads that never shut off, that's probably a really good thing. Okay, because I actually do remember stuff when I've had a good night's sleep. Instead of like searching around, what's that word again? Or like Rick, what was his last name? It sort of helps a little bit.
Yeah.
And waste removal, we're not talking about your digestive system here. Okay. It would, yes.
Luckily.
Yes. Okay. And I'm telling you, don't fall for it if you're dreaming that you're getting ready to go to the bathroom. Don't do it. Okay. Never go to the bathroom in your dreams. Um, but the brain irritates, or initiates, I should say, a cleansing process, and it flushes out waste and toxins. Um, I was talking to somebody last night. The Verizon had told them they had to reboot their phone. Okay, because I guess something with the daughter when they went on to a new plan, but it actually by shutting down their phone, turning it off, would actually wipe out a bunch of files and temporary files and stuff that was in your phone. So when you started it up again, you started it up fresh. And that's the same thing, with your computer. I know I have people that say, I leave my computer on all night. Shut it down. Trust me. Okay, especially with the way they hack into computers. Shut it down. It's probably a safe thing. Now, plasticity. You say you can't talk, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sleep helps support the healthy communication and reorganization of nerve cells, the neurons, promoting brain plasticity. Okay, so I mean, there's a whole bunch of things scientifically going on in our brain, not just mentally, but physically, that we need to pay attention to. Brainwave activity, our patterns change during different stages of sleep. I think I'm just in one sleep. I'm in that deep REM sleep. And that's going to be due to the PAP machines, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, as you sleep, sometimes you feel yourself falling into a deep, deep sleep. Sometimes my dogs can wake me up
Yeah.
just as I'm falling asleep. That's no big deal. Okay. But wake me up after I've been out cold for an hour or two. Okay. And there's
Hmm.
your irritability starts to show up. Okay. Because you get grumpy real fast. And dreaming, REM sleep is associated with dreaming. You could call astroplaning, you can call it whatever you want. Um, it plays a role in information process and memory creation. Sometimes I remember stuff during the night that I couldn't remember during the day. And I mean, correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong, that's got to be the fact that we're shutting off part of our brain. And during that memory consolidation and waste removal, we're getting rid of all the junk in our head. And all of a sudden, hey, there it is. There's that little file I was looking for that, had Rick's last name in
Yeah.
it, and it will come back to me. And then, of course, it works for the body, energy conservation. It slows the body down during sleep, unless you got restless leg syndrome, and then that will, you might be moving your legs
Yeah.
a lot. And in fact,
I've had several clients tell me, just speaking of restless leg syndrome randomly, I've had clients tell me that being in a rocking chair really helped.
sleeping in one,
They felt like that,
or just sitting in
just like when they
one.
were
Oh, I got you. Okay.
experiencing just rocking back and forth, just making sure that they're rocking back and forth with their legs, and that seemed to help.
I know that my wife used to tell me that she was afraid sometimes to sleep next to me because my dreams were so vivid, and I'd have this dream, that I was Mr. Action Hero, and I was fighting off somebody, and I was kicking them, and actually what I was doing was kicking her. The dogs didn't sleep on
Oh
the
man.
bed, okay? You know, until I was started using the CPAP machines, okay? And from that point on, it's like I'm dead to the world, okay? I mean, literally, I can lay down in one spot and 6, 7 hours. I'm still in that same spot. Does wonders for, as your brother would say, does wonders for the shoulders and stuff and the neck, but, it's still there. Um, and again, for the body, it repairs the cells, helps you recover, repair your muscles, your organs, other cells, even hormone release. Because during sleep, the body releases hormones like a growth hormone and cortisol. Unfortunately, not the hair one, but and they're important for tissue repair, growth, and stress regulation. And then your heart rate and blood pressure, okay, they typically decrease during sleep hours, which helps. And obviously your muscles relax during that time too. As I say, unless there are medicines and there are ways to prevent that. Okay, but me personally, and this just an unqualified, unprofessional opinion, I think it's because you're not sleeping that well. Because I find when I'm sleeping really, really well and really, really deep, my arms don't move, my hands don't move, nothing. I'm just out. Okay, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So, a question that a lot of people ask: how much sleep should I get in a night? Okay, boy, do I find
It, from I've always heard 8 hours, but I've heard varying things. I mean, I know some people are insistent that they need like 9. I've heard some people say that they have to have 12, but I think 8 hours is pretty
well,
much the
according to what they're
standard.
saying here, typical adults, need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. Teens need between 8 to 10 hours a night. Children's sleep vary because of their age. Like preschoolers, they need like 10 to 13 hours, but that also includes naps, during the day. And school age children need 9 to 12 hours. Okay, now seniors, I thought maybe there was a difference in seniors. Okay, because I looked those things up. But basically, we're the same way, 7 to 9 hours. The only difference is that, and trust me, I live in a senior community. Okay, it's dead silent outside right now. We tend to go to bed earlier here. The older people, and wake up earlier in the morning. I mean, I crawl out of bed sometimes at like 8:30 in the morning, and I'll go to the bathroom and then throw on some slippers, change the oxygen tank to portable tank, and take the dog out because dog goes outside, and I'm like crawling out from a dead sleep, and I'm outside, and there's my neighbors out back power washing the house, and other ones are mowing the grass and stuff, and I'm like, what time is it? It's like 5 after 8. What is going on? These people have been out there for 2 or 3 hours already. I even after I wake up, I still need about 40 minutes for the brain to completely wake up before I'm going to run out and start doing stuff. So there's try to get the recommended hours of sleep. And like you say, if you travel a lot, so if you have an early flight out of Indy, okay, you're going to go to bed earlier. If
Yeah.
I'm getting up at 3, well, probably about 7 o'clock. See you. 'Cause I'm one of those
Yeah.
people. I need that 7, 8 hours sleep every night. And then the
Yeah.
big question comes. This one was my favorite. Can you catch up on missed sleep? Because there's so many people that say, you know what, the weekends, yeah, I'll just catch up on the sleep over the weekend. So I'll ask you, is that
You know, I mean, so I would defer to a physician as far as the biological aspects of that, but I believe it's a myth. I think it's more, it's kind of like, um, you can't necessarily catch up on medicine. You know what I mean? Like if you think of sleep in that way, then, um, but I do know that I've read in several different places that they're showing that missed sleep compounds. And so, like, if a person consistently, or on a regular basis is sleep deprived, that it basically, and they've pointed to signs of like dementia, all sorts of different things. But I bet that's a myth. I don't know that you
well?
can
It says,
technically
well,
catch
you
up on
can
sleep. I don't.
partially catch up on missed sleep. It's not the perfect fix for sleep loss. Okay, a recent health magazine article suggests that people can make up for lost sleep on another day, but not all of it. Okay, they found that 43% of adults believe they can fully recover over the weekend, which is wrong. Okay, remember, you can reduce some sleep by sleeping a couple extra hours on the weekend, but you're not going to fully erase the damage you caused, by sleeping 3 extra hours on Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I missed church.
Yeah.
Okay, I overslept. Okay, no, it's not going to help you. Sleep isn't like calories. That was a great example they used. So, in other words, you can't catch up on those missed calories. It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
So you know, going back and forth with your sleep is another problem that people have. People that I'm going to use my dad as an example. When he was a cop, he either worked 8 to 4 shift, or he worked 4 to 12, or he worked midnight to 8.
Yeah.
Okay, and that change in sleep pattern. By the time he got used to the new sleep pattern, it was time to switch hours again. So,
That'd be
and I,
brutal.
I don't get how they do it. I really don't. I'm surprised I didn't think of that last week, because I would have asked Dave that question, because
Yeah.
that's really big. I mean, for police officers, and especially as we talked about, they have to be on guard every second that they're out. I mean, while they're sitting there
Yeah.
eating a sandwich, inside the car, we've seen so much of people come up behind them and just start shooting at them and stuff. So
Yeah.
they have to be aware at all times. So they said here is a good idea. Instead of trying to fully recover over the weekend, try adding an extra hour or two to your sleep schedule each night, and avoid the temptation to sleep excessively on weekends. So, in other words, if you only got 4 hours sleep and you usually sleep about 7, the next couple of days sleep 9. The next couple of days, and slowly your body will catch up. But like it says here, it can lead to health problems, including obesity. Maybe that's my no. High blood pressure and cognitive defects. It can also take several days or several weeks to recover from deep, sleep deprivation. Now I'm going to go on to one more topic before I turn this back to your questions. I'm trying to answer, folks, if you're wondering. I'm trying to do the medical side of it here, being that the last minute, we had to make a little change. But I want to go to sleep apnea because those are the big key words today. Okay, I mean, obstructive sleep apnea. Um, OSA. It's a condition where breathing pauses or becomes shallow during sleep due to a blockage in the upper airway, often caused by relaxed throat muscles, soft tissues collapsing. And it can be a serious condition which impacts your quality of life and increase various health risks if left untreated. Now, I'm going to go with a personal example of it. When I lived in Connecticut, I used to work in Manhattan and I used to take Metro North every morning and every night coming home. Well, it was like I was leaving the house like 5:30 in the morning. I had to drive like an hour down to Fairfield, then I had to catch a train into Grand Central, and then I had to either walk a mile or take the subway to get to my office every day, and then I had to go back the same way. Okay, when I went back at night. So sometimes at night when I got on the train, I was exhausted. I had worked all day and everything else. And I'm going to be on the train for an hour, Metro North, and I got my seat against the wall. My head's leaning against the wall of the window, and I'm going to sleep. Well, two things were happening. Number one, sometimes I had people wake me up. You're snoring, and I looked at them and I was like, that usually means I'm sleeping. Here's your card. Like that's what they used to do. Bill
Yeah.
Unville. But I mean, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I'm snoring a little bit. I'm sorry. Why? Was I disturbing you? Okay. If not, yeah, I know I'm snoring. But then the other one was even like, Jen and stuff. And my ex-wife used to like wake me up. And I was like, what? I mean, shake me, wake up. Like, what? What? Well, you weren't
Hmm.
breathing. Well, if I wasn't breathing, I was dead. Okay. And I obviously wasn't dead. Okay.
Yeah.
But my heart rate and stuff and breathing had slowed down so much, that I was either snoring loud, or that. And we said during sleep, the muscles in the throat relax. Okay, the throat can collapse, which narrows and blocks the airways. Okay, which a lot of times why you're getting the snoring. And it causes pauses in breathing or shallow breathing, and leads to oxygen level drops. Okay, maybe I have restrictive lung disease. I know all about that. You don't want that to happen to you. Okay, the brain senses these changes and briefly wakes the person to resume breathing, but usually the person's not even aware of that it's taking place. The cycle of breathing interruptions can happen repeatedly during the night, disrupting sleep and causing health issues. Now, I know I go on later and I talk about that they send you for a sleep study, okay, to determine all of this. I think when I did my sleep study, they had found that I had stopped breathing like 56 times a night. An hour. I'm sorry, an
Wow.
hour. 56 times an
Wow.
hour.
I mean, that's almost once a minute. That's
Yeah,
almost every
exactly.
minute.
At least once during that minute, I stopped breathing for it.
Look, here's I had a
Hmm.
question for you, Steve. So I know that you sleep
Yes,
with a
I sure
CPAP,
do.
right? Is what? How did that? How did it end up coming about? Like, was it something that you thought you
Well,
needed, or was it a physician or a family?
there are some signs of that, okay, which I'm going to get into. And I had a lot of just even when I just talked about there, where snoring and breathing issues and stuff were concerned, and especially with the lung issues, they want to make sure that you're breathing well during the night. And they sent me for a sleep test, and I'm going to joke with Dr. Presti when I see him, and I've joked with him many times on He's responsible for the first time in 21 years of my wife and I sleeping apart. Okay, never. I mean, we've been together every single day for 21 years. We were married there. And when I went for the sleep test, obviously I had to go sleep in this bed. And I even remember telling the nurse when I got in there, I was like, that whole bed's for me? And she looked at me and started to laugh. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm serious because usually there's a dog or two. Okay, there was a cat at one time that was sleeping up there with me and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And Jen, I was like, this whole king size bed is mine. And she goes, yeah. I was like, I'm going to sleep like an angel. No, you don't sleep like an angel during those tests because they wake you up every like 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Okay, to try this, they put the oxygen on me again because first they wanted me to do it without oxygen. And then they ended up putting the oxygen back on it. And then I think I went about 2 hours towards the end where they had gotten all the levels right and just let me sleep. Thank you very much because I had to drive an hour after I got up. But
Oh man.
it was all these different things that it will affect your mood. Okay, let's just go through some of it. Daytime sleepiness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating. I just was blaming that on old age, but obviously it wasn't even old age. Okay, increased risk of cardiovascular problems, high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke. I mean, there's a lot of issues, metabolic issues. you know, it can contribute to insulin resistance and increase the risk of type 2 diabetes and type 2 diabetic. And I'm very highly insulin resistant, which is why they have me on other meds now. Mood disorders, my wife would say I'm moody, but I don't think I'm that moody. But, depression, and you would know because you see people that are depressed all the time and have mood changes. Um,
Yeah.
and as I said, it can affect memory, you know, one of the things you got to worry about with there was a friend of ours that we had in Indiana who would fall asleep. I forgot what narcolepsy, I think was that. Yeah. Okay,
Narcolepsy.
where you just be talking to him and he just like not out, and which wasn't that bad, except
Yeah.
that he wanted to drive all the time, and I was like, "You could drive, but I'm going in my own car, okay? Because you're not going to fall asleep behind the wheel." Jimmy, who was on the show with his son there, would tell you about Norm, because Jimmy was afraid to get in the car, and stuff, and it was a scary thing, but there are a lot of risk because if you're at a working factory there's a lot of people that work in factories, and you fall asleep at a machine, you could lose an arm, you lose a leg, a limb, anything can happen, that's there. So you don't want to have sleep problems. You're going to make, even from, I'll go even to the other extreme, a business owner, you're going to make bad decisions, okay? Because
Yeah.
you don't want to think things out. You just want to answer the questions. Yeah, okay, yeah, just do this. And, you know, 5 out of 10 times you're wrong. If you're not going to stop for a second and weigh it out in your head, the best way to do stuff. Now, there is treatments available. And that's where we're going to go into CPAP machine. Okay, it involves using a machine that keeps air open during the sleep. Okay, I'm going to tell you 50% of the people that I know of will not use the CPAP machine that have been prescribed by their
Why
doctors.
not?
They will not wear that machine. They say, oh, they don't want something stuck to their face all night, and it bothers them and stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. The first week I had it on, I was like, boy, this is probably going to be about a 2 week therapy, and it's not going to work after this, okay? Because I have a beard, which makes it even worse because the seal on the
Oh
mask
wow.
doesn't seal as well against the beard because it slides. So you got to have it on tighter. And when you have it on tighter, you wake up with like the indentations in the back of your head and stuff. I even catch myself sometimes. I wake up during the night and I'm scratching underneath the thing that's going across your head. But the flip side, I'll tell you, the moment that air hits you, okay, especially for me with restrictive lung disease, It's like someone just turns. You think about when they turn a fan on in front of you. It's like they pump you full of oxygen. That little machine pumps you full of oxygen. And let me tell you, you sleep. Okay, I mean, amazing. I have watched the machine score you. You have a little app that the machine contacts the website through the internet. Actually, it's how Dr. Presti is
Yeah.
mine for sake of accountability and I can't think of the word for it because I didn't get enough sleep last night. But he's my sleep doctor. That's how I met him and stuff, and really good person, really good doctor and stuff. But he gets a report from the website like every couple of months on my sleep progress, my scores. And the machine actually
Yeah.
scores you to how many times you wake up during the night and take the mask off. Like, how many times you're waking up to go to the bathroom, let's say, for instance. Okay, after I think it's 3 times, it starts going against your score for the night. And I was really bad. I used to eat a lot during the night. So I take off the mask and go inside, and eat for a half hour. Make some sandwiches and stuff, and come back. So that was giving me
Hmm.
scores like in the 80s. Okay, I even looked just for last night's score because I had a problem with the app, but I got it to work. I had 100 score last night. My scores anywhere run from 98 to 100 every single night because with the diabetic, if you have your blood sugar under control, you you don't wake up all night. Everybody jokes around, I'm a diabetic, I don't sleep. No, you're a diabetic and you don't sleep to get up to pee because you don't have control over your numbers. If you have control over your sugar and stuff and you're keeping it around 100, you're going to sleep the whole night. And let me tell you, the first night you do it, you're going to want that every night. It's like it's somebody who's doing cocaine. They get that first high from it, and they're always chasing that high every single night. Okay, which I don't have to tell you, but at least to our listeners, that's probably the problem with drugs
Yeah.
is that they continue to chase that high, even when they're
They call it chasing the
right,
dragon.
even when you're doing the drug, you know, like they go on a binge or something like that. The reason they're on a binge is they're still chasing that first or second high they got, the first or second line they did, and they're not going to get that. Okay, so they keep trying more
Yeah.
and more and more, and you're at 46 hours and you're still sitting there. If you can afford it, you're still sitting there doing cocaine, and that's. I mean, I went down that rabbit hole a little bit once, and was smart enough to say, "What the heck am I doing?" and walked away from it, and have never touched cocaine again. It's been about 25 years. Okay, and I have no feelings of wanting to do it or anything else. It's like cigarettes. I stopped smoking cigarettes 5 years ago. You can sit right next to me and smoke a cigarette. Doesn't bother me. I've my brain is a lot smarter than that now, and so is my health. So you asked for how do we know that we have problems? Loud snoring is one of them. Okay, we all know those people. When they're sleeping.
Actually, my wife and I are dealing with our
Oh,
Chihuahua. He's got a major snoring problem, keeping us up all the
but
time.
so the little Chihuahua that we had used to snore. Okay, I could hear the
Yeah.
dog through.
I told her he needs a
Yep.
CPAP. That's what I said. A
But you
CPAP.
know what? We got to talk to Dr. Presti when we see him and ask him. Have something for pets. Okay, breathing pauses during sleep. As I said, your partners are going to notice gasping, even choking sounds a little bit because you're having problems breathing. Okay, excessive daytime sleepiness is another one. If you can't sleep during the day, you're really like drowsy and sleepy. You got a problem with your sleep at night. And I've been there. Where, damn it, I slept 9 hours last night, and yet I'm still
Hmm.
exhausted. Well, because 50 times a night I stop breathing, 50 times an hour I stop breathing. So yeah, I
So is it so with that with so is it that it basically is it preventing the brain from
yes,
entering
yes it
REM
does.
sleep?
Because every time you're starting to fall into a sleep, and you have that feel, takes you right back out of it. Your body actually, like it says, it wakes you up, but you're not even aware it's waking you up. But it's stopping you from hitting that REM sleep. And there's some people that can sleep 4 hours. And if they get 4 hours of REM sleep, they're fine. They're better than some people that sleep 9, 10 hours a night because they got the correct sleep during the night. Okay, those that wake up with a morning headache, okay, that's another sign of that you didn't sleep well. That's your body, telling you. And you're gasping for air during the sleep, as we said, waking up with a dry mouth. So unless you did cocoa or smoking a joint or something like that, you're gonna have that
Yeah.
dry mouth is something that you're having breathing problems. I was one that my mouth was always open when I slept. Okay, and that caused
Yeah.
difficulty. We said difficulty concentrating, moodiness, irritability, difficulty staying asleep. Those with insomnia, and frequent nighttime urination, as every diabetic can attest to if they've had a problem at some point. And then we said we use CPAP machine. It's a continuous positive airway pressure machine. Okay, for those who maybe living under, you know, somewhere they've never seen one before. It's actually a mask that goes onto your face and it covers your nose and your mouth. And there's a hose attached to it that goes to a machine. And that hose, when you turn the machine on, forces all this air up into your sinuses. And if you sleep with an open mouth, it's going to throw it right into your mouth as well. Now, if you don't sleep with your mouth, they got some really good masks they've come out with lately. Okay, there's one that just is like a bar just under your nose. It's got like two pieces for your nose, and it's just a bar that's strapped. So your face is really clear. See, I used to wear one that covered like all the way up the top of my nose and stuff. And let me tell you, it kept going in my eye. It was bothering my eye. I
Oh,
hated it.
man.
With the passion that I hate that. The mask I have now, I've been using for a while. It works really, really well. Um, you wear it all night when you're sleeping. After you fall, listen, folks, when you fall asleep with it on, you forget. You don't even notice you got it on. Just don't get up and jump out of bed and run someplace because you're gonna think a machine's gonna go flying. And
I wonder if there's statistics on how many people have accidentally
well, I'm
clotheslined
sure that
themselves with their
I
CPAP
would
on.
think the people that we should ask on that should be the CPAP suppliers, like the oxygen companies, of how many
Yeah.
machines they've had to replace because it's broken. Okay, um, luckily mine for some reason I'm not really sure why they were supposed. My insurance company was supposed to purchase mine after a certain amount of time, which is a smart move on their part because then they're not paying rent on the machine all the time. But for the flip side,
Yeah.
it was good for me because if it broke, they got to fix it. Okay, now if it breaks,
Yeah.
it's my own problem. But they do send you supplies every month. You get new masks and stuff. Every like 3 months, they send you a new hose. They send you a strap, put a new strap to replace the harness. Uh, you have to clean the machine every week. Okay, and what I mean by cleaning the machine is first off, you should clean your mask every night, every morning when you take it off. Okay, I mean I used to buy the CPAP wipes that they sell. It was like they almost looked like a handy wipe type bottle, and I realized that all those basically were the oxygen, the alcohol prep things. So I
Uh,
bought the larger, the medium size alcohol prep pads, and I used one of those in the morning and just wipe the mess down outside and in. And then once a week, I actually fill up, use Dawn dish soap, and get a little tray, put your hose in there, and let it do in there, rinse it out a few times, and then hang it up to dry. And you do notice the difference. I mean, it's a cleaner smell because it's actually taking your breath and everything else in that. And after a while, that can be kind
yeah.
of ranky. um, it works, as I said, by keeping the airways open. It prevents breathing pauses, which is apnea. Reduces snoring. I don't think I snore at all. with this thing on. Improves sleep quality. Yes, 1,000%. I will tell you, it improves sleep quality. Reduces daytime sleepiness. I'm just old, so I do that anyway. And it lowers the risk of heart disease, stroke, and other health complications. Um, what I can tell you is I sleep 4, 5, maybe 6 hours at a time straight through, and then get up and go to the bathroom, and then lay back down. And I try to sleep again, but my dog at like 7 o'clock wants get up and play. So it sees the light coming in from outside, and no matter how much I've put like curtains over the windows, it still comes in, and he knows it's time to wake up. So, he'll start. He's really slick. He'll sleep on top of my pillow and just start licking my scalp. Like he's nice. He
Oh,
just but he wants you awake because once you like wake up and it's like stop, then he knows you're awake, and then he'll like jump
yeah.
up and like come on, let's play and stuff. Yes, so okay, but I'm going to go back to you for some of these and give my voice a break
All
here.
right.
Um, what are some of the common reasons that you hear from patients as to why they can't sleep at night?
Racing thoughts is typically the most common one that I hear, working in mental health and so forth. And also just, a lot of times when people are depressed, all they want to do is sleep. Anxiety, people have anxiety about things that will keep them up. Um, but I would say racing thoughts for me is typically the most common.
So does therapy help? Just if someone goes through therapy, does it help improve their sleep quality?
It can. It wouldn't be able to do the same thing, obviously, as a CPAP or a medical intervention of some kind, but um, definitely helping them to establish nighttime rituals, because there's a lot that goes into that. Our body, um, we're creatures of habit. So having a nighttime ritual, um, to help them wind down for bed. Uh, another thing, another reason that a lot of clients, or another thing that comes up with a lot of clients is that they'll say, I used to be a morning person. I haven't been a morning person for years. How do I do that? And I always tell them about an article that I saw years ago where basically this person said, it's painful, but if you want to do it, this is guaranteed to work. They said, if you want to get up at 5 a.m., for example, starting whatever day, you get up at 5 a.m., even if you didn't fall asleep till 4 a.m. And they said that after a few days, then your circadian rhythm, your body catches up, and then you would start to be. And I was a morning person for a little while in my life, not as long as I would have liked to be, but I mean, that was true. I would start to fall asleep when it was time to, and a lot of times I'd wake up without an
I mean,
alarm.
I used to when I worked for the post office. I would wake up until like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had to like 6:30. I was functioning already, sorting mail, carrying boxes, and everything else. So yeah, and I found even for me, and I'm not sure if it works, if it's true for other people, but I found that if I sleep, if I know I'm going to get up at 7 o'clock every morning, okay, on weekends I still get up at 7 o'clock in the morning because you get your body into that habit of sleep. So I mean, have you seen that? People um, that complain that they can't get up at 7 o'clock, but they're also not waking up on weekends until like 11:30 in the morning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, actually, a friend of mine, I remember telling him, I said, I just can't get up in the morning. And he said, well, what time do you go to bed? I was like, I don't know, 1, 2. He's like, do you go to bed at the same time every night? And no. He said, well, if you start doing that, you'll probably start getting up about the same time. But it always took a lot more for me to figure out those simple things in life.
So I want to try to start winding down on this, um, but there is an important question, and you probably see it more because this is not from a medical side. Technology. Do you think people have increased sleep issues and irritability due to technology use?
Abs- Absolutely. And a lot of the things that I've read talk about, like if you look at your phone when you're going to bed, which I'm totally guilty of that, you know, but they talk about how your brain will confuse that with daylight, so even just whether your eyes are open or not, you're still perceiving what's going on around you, and um, that can be really
Yeah,
problematic.
I think a lot of people don't realize that we have to disconnect from technology. I myself, unless someone calls me at like 9:30 at night, you know, I'm away from. I might talk on the phone to somebody, but I'm not looking at the screen as far as that. My computers, except on a podcast night. Okay, I'm by 5:30, quarter to six. My computer's shut down for the night. I walk away from it. Yeah, I used to be on it like 8, 9 o'clock at night when I was working. No, there's life that goes on around me, and I like to enjoy that life whenever I can. So, and technology has played. We've changed so much in the last 10, 15 years. We rely on technology so much, than we did before.
Yeah.
Texts and everything else. I mean, it's just the way we go. Um, I want to ask you one last question. Well, actually, two of them. What are your thoughts on supplements for sleep? Like a lot of people take melatonin. They use weighted blankets, for example. Is that stuff, in your opinion, good or bad? I mean, is it just a substitution? I can't sleep, so let's drug myself up and sleep and not dealing with the problem.
I think that there's truth to that, those things. I mean, because here's an example. If anyone who's ever slept on a really uncomfortable bed versus a really comfortable one, well, which one, which night did you have better sleep? Probably on the comfortable bed. So, any of those things that add comfort, um, or can, even if you are just feeling like you're sleeping better, I think that that's important. So, I think that anything that could help, that's healthy. Let me add that. Anything that's healthy that could help, by
Yeah.
all means, because sleep is
See, I
important.
just, I have the thing about meds. I take so many of them. It's just like, I don't know. It's sometimes like people dealing with anxiety issues, okay, and they give them all those, the different drugs, Prozac and all that stuff for that. I think that's like a band aid to what the real problem is. It's like I got back problems with my
Yeah,
the hamstrings and stuff that don't stretch right. Okay, and or I don't stretch them enough. Maybe is a better way of putting it. Okay, so it's easy to take like a painkiller or ibuprofen, but like Adam, your brother will tell you, you're a chiropractor, you're just putting a band aid on what the real problem is. And I
yeah.
often wonder if, when they're starting to take those kind of drugs for that, are we just not dealing with what the core issue is and just, medicating ourselves?
I think potentially so. Absolutely.
So what would you say? What's like, if someone's having problems going to sleep at night, what advice would you have for them?
The first thing I would recommend is that they establish a ritual, that kind of lets the body know, like, hey, we're getting ready to go to sleep. Let's start winding down. Um, but then also, like I said, I've seen some of the best results or gotten the best feedback from clients that tried like guided meditations for sleep, or even guided meditations for anxiety reduction. Those things seem to really
Yep.
help as far as putting a person in or helping to put a person in the right mindset for
Those things
sleep.
are really important, and I hope that people pay attention. I just wanted to make sure there was no questions that I wasn't paying attention to during the chat there. I figure I want to get them in at least before we go off the air here. So, you know, we will do shows on meditation. We will do shows, on different techniques and stuff. I mean, we're trying to. There's so many topics. I mean, I'm actually amazed because at the last show I was lost on who we were going to talk to, what I was going to talk about, and stuff. And there were just a list of topics. Mental health issues, and obviously we're striking a chord somewhere because the listenership is growing. I promise we're working out all the kinks, you know, and we're doing the best that we can. Tonight's been, with the exception of the mic not working when we first started, somehow or other got muted. I'm not really sure how. But other than that, I mean, we've had great broadcast all the way through here tonight. So, and remember, if you're struggling with sleep, you're not alone, and there is help available. You know, go see your doctor. If that's the first thing. I mean, really, there's nothing wrong with going to your general practitioner and saying, "Listen, I have a problem sleeping at night." Okay, and he or she will either send you to a sleep doctor to find out what's going on, and or they may also say, but you may also want to speak to a counselor about that. Go see a psychotherapist for it, and see if there's because they're going to ask them a bunch of questions. They're going to weed out whether or not this is like a health issue, like you have restrictive lung disease, or you're just stressed the hell out, or you're gambling all the time and stuff. They're going to know where to point you. But I guess the first step is you got to ask for help. You know, it's with everything we're
Absolutely.
talking about on these shows. If you don't take the first step and ask for help, you're not going to get better. Okay, I'm lucky, with some of the problems I've had over the past. I've been lucky. I dealt with that stuff and got past it. But if you've fallen in so deep, like you even heard with Blake from the heroin thing, there's the point to where even you have difficulty with help actually working for you too. So understand if you're that deep into something, you got to stop, okay, at a certain point and say, okay, I need help. Okay, even if somebody does an intervention with you, they do an intervention, and still you have to decide, I want help. I need help. Think about all those interventions you used to see that show, whatever it was, the intervention or whatever. Okay, and all the people got around. If the party did not want help, all your well wishes and stuff are all well and true. You're going to tell them all the consequences, but if you don't say, "Hey, I have a problem, I need help," you're not going to get help. And the same thing if you can't sleep. I mean, that's the easiest thing, to go and say, "Hey, I need help with this." I think your doctor, whether he or she, whoever it is going to appreciate you being honest with them. It's almost like I don't know if you've been to a physician lately. They go through a series of questions. Maybe it's because I'm old. I I don't know. Okay, he sits there and he's got to read them off of the computer. You have problems tying your shoes lately. It's like, really? Are you serious? Okay, you're going to take 5 minutes of my life asking me these questions. Are you depressed? If I was depressed, you think I'd be sitting here telling you? Okay, I'd be going to see a psychologist or something like that. So, but remember, just go out of the way. You know, prioritize your rest. Okay, it isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for both your mental and physical.
It's a,
Yep.
it's a
So,
need.
if this episode encouraged you at all tonight, share it with somebody you love. We talked about this almost every show. It's so easy to show someone you love and care about them. Just say, hey, you know what? There's an episode I want you to watch. Watch these guys. Tell me what you think. And, it might be the episode about sleep, or it might be about gambling or drug addiction. Share the show with them because it's going to help them some way or others. We'd love to know what you think in your comments. I have been getting emails. Thank you for all the emails that we've been getting. Actually, even a sponsor contacted us wanting to sponsor the show. So I might be willing to do 1 minute commercial with them, on their product. But it's got to be in reference to our show. This isn't going to be about, tying shoelaces. Okay. It has to be something as far as your health and your mental health. Follow us on Facebook, your website, yourlifematterspodcast.com. We actually just redid a little of the website. I actually went to a person I sold my company to and asked them to help out on some rankings and stuff. And, it's turning into a good website. And again, thanks to everybody that's tuning in and subscribing. If you haven't done it and you're watching this, hit the subscribe button. Also, hit the like button, too. That doesn't hurt. And as I said to people, just leave a comment in the chat room just saying where you're from or great job or something like that. Or, I often wondered about, we'd love to read your comments. So remember, until next week, this is the place where every episode is a journey. It's a journey into your heart of what truly matters, which is your health, your adventure, and the issues that are shaping our world, and especially the issues that are affecting your life today. So whether you're seeking inspiration, advice, or simply a moment of reflection, we hope this podcast will encompass everything that you need to navigate that beautiful journey in life that we all should be living. So remember, stay strong, stay hopeful, and remember, your story matters, sleeping well matters, your journey matters, and above all, please never forget, your life matters. Now that the show is over, you can go to sleep. God bless you, and we hope to see you all next week.
Sweet dreams, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this week's new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Please be sure to join us again next week for another great episode with your host Steve Hodgson and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you are valuable and important. Take time to cherish yourself and those around you. Never forget, your life matters.